Okay, good evening and welcome to the Charter Revision Commission special meeting. Mr. James, would you do the roll call, please?
Actually, our recording secretary is online.
Oh, okay. Would you take the roll, please?
Yes, Chairman Harpy,
Here.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Present.
Commissioner Capello,
Here.
Commissioner Minor, Commissioner Borup.
Here.
Commissioner Minor is
online with us as well.
I'm here. Sorry, I could not unmute.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a quorum. Pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next on our agenda is public participation on agenda items via Zoom application or phone. If you elect to speak, please state your name and address. You're allowed up to 2-minute time limit. That's 888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 by phone. Any member of the public wishing to speak? Have anybody in the queue, James?
I do have one attendee, no hand raised at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, comments by commissioners of the Charter Revision Commission. Any comments? Hearing none, discussion of charter language review by our town attorney.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I can, sir.
My Zoom application is not working, and I'm sorry about that. Not sure why.
Okay. Mr. Ancona, we'd like you to review items that you were discussing recently with the town clerk respective to the draft charter language on the charged items, the 13 charge items from the council, and then the 3 additional non-charged items that the commission at this point in time has elected to submit for review. These are all recommendations. We don't make the decisions of what finally goes ahead. This is for the edification of the public. This is up to the council. So we work within the strict statute standards of recommendation, not a recommendation. But we do provide language that shows the element of work and the weight of work that the commission has put on in each of these items. And that'll also be submitted to the council and the public, as well as a collection of the minutes of the meetings for all of the meetings that we've had and the public participation in those meetings, as well as any conversations that we've had with department heads and other members of the town government to gain input as we went through each one of these items.
Mr. Chairman. Commissioner.
All right, James, does the commission have what you sent me today?
They do. They have a
All right,
physical copy in front of them. We have it on screen as well.
All right, so I guess if you could guide me along, because I can't see it.
So we'll start
we
in
can
section
start with-
403.
There we go. That's probably the easiest one, I would think. And it's just a question of changing the timing of the organizational meeting that happens after each election. And in discussing, I have to say that James is an incredible help on all of this. His guidance is the absolute best. So we talked about using language that would comport with the actual town council scheduling of their official meeting times and so forth under their rules. And it seems like that language would be better suited rather than putting a specific time that cannot be changed without a charter revision.
Okay.
We good?
Yep.
Yeah, we did have recommendations from the council on that change, and they had I'm not disagreeing with you here. I'm just telling you that the input that came to us initially from the council was to have a specific time, but if you're recommending that's not necessary and easier to work without a specific time in the block.
Right. But remember, Mr. Chairman, whatever we say, it's just a suggestion. They
Right.
make the ultimate decision. So,
Right.
um,
No, I'm just trying
This-
to give you kind of how we got to that point.
all right. So that's where we are, and of course, it's your commission's authority to say no. We want to put a time in, and you can do that. Obviously.
If you could excuse me 1 second, the mayor would like to make a comment.
Yeah, I would just say that the council, when we brought it forward, we're just trying to align it with our current meeting time instead of 8 o'clock. But to leave it open so that the future councils, if their schedules change or something changes, they could make it align with whatever theirs is. If this doesn't get revised for another 10 years and something changes, then I think taking that time out and leaving it at the discretion of the council makes sense.
Okay. Everybody else?
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Yes, Commissioner Gonzalez.
No, that's an accident. My hand got raised somehow and I was trying to figure out how to get it off there.
Oh, I can take it down for you. That's not a problem.
Thanks.
There you go.
Thank you.
You're
Okay,
All right. Anybody else?
go ahead, please.
Okay, our next section is section 408, the fund section.
Well, yeah, this is a good one, and I think what you guys pulled off here is perfect. I mean, it allows the flexibility, and I don't really think you need my comment on it. It just makes sense. It's clear.
So
Okay.
I'll just make a comment on it. In discussions with the town attorney as well as the finance director, we determined, one, the word less really needed to go, but we broke each specific dollar amount and level of requirement into the language. So you have a requirement for something over 1.5%. You have one for the range in between 375 and 1.5%, and you have anything lower than 375. And the specific requirements of that action, whether it's an ordinance, a resolution, or a referendum or special election. So that specifically
nicely
called out that
done.
language.
Yep.
So she didn't have a problem with the 1.50.
Now, the 1.50 is not a problem.
that
That
what
works
the-
out to just a little over $2 million right now.
Right.
And that would, of course, change in each budget year.
I mean, the whole goal of the commission on this, well, also it's repetitive in towns around us to have gone to a percentage. But I think the essential goal, as I recall the conversation, was not to have a dead number in there. And then wait 10 years again before you adjust that number. And that's why we went with a metric that's tied to the general fund expenditures and appropriations, because that's where the bulk of tax money goes, where the tax residents or businesses and residents, that's where that money goes to operate the town. So there was no metric before. You went from a $975,000 number that was 10 years old before we saw it. And before that, it was 125,000. So there's 20 years of flat numbers. From a mathematical standpoint, it didn't make sense not to have a metric to measure against. And I'm not sure that
Yeah.
this other language doesn't defeat the purpose of that, but that's fine. Let's move on.
Emergency ordinance. I guess the problem I have a little bit with this is that if it's truly an emergency ordinance, 30 days to hold an informational public hearing, I think is a long time. And I think the public hearing should be compulsory and not optional. That's just my opinion.
And that was my mistake in crossing off shall versus may. So please note that what is on screen would be reversed.
I think
all
the
right, good.
problem, well, during the discussion that the commission had on it, there was no ability for the public to have a sense of the extent of the damage, the impact of it, how long it would come if they didn't have an opportunity to get before the council. And I'm not saying the council wouldn't do this, but an opportunity for them to get before the council to get that information. and maybe I'm missing it and they got deleted or changed, we had language in here, if possible. In other words, if the situation was so bad, the council couldn't meet in any format, then they wouldn't stand. Somebody took that language out.
No, that language
No,
is there. Mr.
no, it's
Chairman.
there.
Right
It's still there.
Okay. Well, I think that's a problem, but it's only a
Okay.
recommendation, so I think the commission doesn't mind this exercise, and that's why we want the good attorney to go through this with us. But I think if
Well, I
we're
tell
gonna
you-
do it, well, let me just finish. If we're
Sure.
gonna do it this way, then either something has to come to us sooner so the commission can digest it. Or, and this isn't a criticism of anybody in the room, I understand the process and the pressure of all the elements of the town government that rest on one or two shoulders. I'm clear on that. But in fairness to the commission, I think we should have seen it sooner. That's just a footnote, not a criticism. And the other piece of it is, we would want to make sure that what we recommended initially in terms of, again, the quality of the effort and the work we put into this, to be attached to whatever goes up to the council with the minutes, because there's some very interesting discussions with the chief of police, the town planner, Mr. Chapman, Ms. Murphy, very quality information that the council perhaps could use. But I'm going to stop there and you go ahead, please. Town attorney, please go ahead.
Well, I don't have anything other than that I believe it should be compulsory, and James says he's going to flip that. And if, Joe, if you don't like, or if the commission doesn't like the if possible, I don't like the if possible, I think it should be a compulsory public hearing.
Okay. You
I
can
mean, you're
move on,
talking about an
please.
emergency ordinance that affects
Right,
the citizens of this town.
right. So we will
Anything
want
else
to have
on
an
409?
opportunity. Pardon?
No, go ahead.
We
I'm
would-
sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
We would want to have an opportunity for the public. You know what happened during the last emergency. That's a lesson that history taught us. With this-
Well, yeah, and that does, they didn't even do it by ordinance or by statute or anything.
Yeah,
It was
so-
done by fiat. I mean, talk about unconstitutional. So we want to
That's
try
all
to
we were
avoid
trying to do
situations
is
like that.
attempt to where we'd be executing the same opportunity for the public as on any other ordinance or anything else that this good council does with the public. That's all.
Sure.
Okay, why don't you move ahead?
All right, well, 410, and again, you guys, you know, you guys have done a lot of good work and so forth, but I just want to say that sometimes you can end up going down a rabbit hole and we don't know where we're going with this thing. In reviewing it all, I just wonder if you should leave 410 alone. And
Okay.
if you could give.
Let me say, we got into 410 on the basis that there were initially, well, more in the initiative part, 411, where there were multiple dates that the town clerk had to go through to make things operate in conjunction with the way the charter is written currently. I'm sure you saw that when you went through it. And are you saying that it's not confusing language, or?
I think it gets so complicated that I think we're losing our focus, and I would suggest leaving 410 alone.
Okay.
It implicates too many factors, and of course that's my recommendation. It's just
No,
my
I
recommendation.
understand. I'm not criticizing, Blaine. I'm just trying to give you some of the basic thought we had to go through.
Sure.
Was 410, James, was that something you had concern with?
That was something we had a concern with in general from the clerk's office. What happened was the language that we currently have proposed in the current document that's on screen has some of the elements of a town meeting format, which we no longer are. Also, the loss of some of the details that tie into other sections, it becomes something that we really need to, I think, take a little bit deeper look at and start writing now so that it'll fit in at a later point when we look at the charter again.
Okay.
This one section does affect multiple sections, so we are sort of stuck when we made such drastic changes in just one, but didn't touch 411. We also, there's a reference into, I believe, the financial sections under this one as well. So there are a couple extra areas that we would have needed to look at, which at the time hadn't realized until I began adding the language into the full draft charter and realized the issues we were going to create under it.
Okay. Thank you.
So.
And James, as far as you can recall, I don't even recall a single initiative under 410. Do you? Can you
I
recall?
haven't been aware of any, and I don't believe the community center in Mill Pond Park was an initiative one as well. That was all referendum, so I can't think going back at least 20 years.
Yeah,
What
can't
I'm
either.
saying here is that, if memory serves me correctly, to go to the mayor's point, you were concerned about some of the steps to go through seem confusing. And a member of the public came in and gave us some ideas too. And the one person that happened to read it in the public, or at least came forward after reading it, made some pretty good points about what a complex, confusing
Correct.
procedure it was. So I guess the fact we could leave it alone, but if something should arise where someone wants a certain thing to happen and they want to go through process, that the whole thing wouldn't fall apart under some other review, Ben. I mean, are you satisfied the language is
Yeah,
clear enough, I guess? And I
Yeah, I do,
understand
but
the recommendation.
And I will say that it's almost conflicting with what we have as a Republican form of government versus a democracy, and it looks like it's old school democracy when we don't have that in America. We're a republic, and it gets confusing.
So what would you recommend? We hold off on?
Yeah, I just wouldn't touch it. Yep.
And then let the council look at it again? Because they're the ones asking us on these things to.
I don't know. The electors do still have the right to initiate a petition under 411. I don't.
Well, I know
these
that. Yeah, I'm not suggesting.
These are elected officials, and their responsibility is to do what's best for the town, best for the voters, but not as a democracy. I mean, they are empowered to represent us, and I'm not seeing how we're helping anybody at this point, especially something that we haven't seen ever take place. I don't know if we should be touching it.
No, I guess our concern was if it did take place, where are we? You know, that's.
We'd make it happen. It would be a difficult process in the time periods, but.
We live in such a litigious society that someone could make well.
Yeah, I think it'll work.
In the interest of time, we can come back. Let's keep moving forward. We'll come back to that.
All right, the next place we go is 412. And what you guys did on here makes a lot of sense, because you're looking at removal for cause and what's cause and so forth. We've got people that simply have moved out of town or simply don't attend. And I think James put it at 75% instead of missing 4 meetings or something like that. And I think the 75% really works, especially considering some commissions that meet once a year, or some don't even meet at all until there's an issue, like the Board of Ethics and so forth. So I like what you guys did. Not that I have to like it, I'm just saying it looks good.
You want to move on to the next?
Actually, I'd just like to touch base on that one as
Yeah.
well. The reason that I did change that 4 to a percentage as well is it actually corresponds to the boards and commissions booklet that the council passed in 2019. So both of those match in the requirements of attendance, so that if they are removing, there is a reason behind it.
Yeah, we wanted to make it clear, this isn't, there is already provision within removals and suspensions that requires to be a punitive action, investigation for, just inappropriate behavior, malfeasance, things more applicable to a crime in some cases. And the mayor wanted to distinguish a process of taking care of people who no longer fit the definition of the appointment. They've moved out of town, they're not electors anymore, that kind of thing.
Without implicating malfeasance of any sort. It just makes sense.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Move on, please.
All right. So the next stop is revision to the adopted charter. And James, I think we were talking about putting that in the final section of the charter. Yes.
Correct. 10:05. I actually have it notated in the comment section.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Speaking with the town attorney this afternoon, we both realized that really this wasn't the location. We should have it under what was originally amendments under section 10:05 instead of under specifically, I believe it's the council section. What is this one? Yeah, under council itself. While it is an action of the council, it should be a process or a provision of the charter going forward, not really the duties of the of the council itself. Under the statute, they're already charged with that.
Okay.
Yep.
So we'll get to that at the end of the pages.
All right. The next stop is, are we good with that? We're okay?
Yep.
I guess the next stop is, go ahead.
Just a
Chairman,
moment.
just one question on that one. Is there some change here from shall to may? And does that make a difference in this?
Yeah, we discussed that this afternoon, and I think it should be up to the town council itself at the time whether they want to open the charter, because it's a huge undertaking, and maybe things are just fine in 10 years and nobody wants to touch it. So we shouldn't compel them to have to do that, forcing an elected body to do something that is totally unnecessary. So we thought it'd be better to have May.
Okay, because that came to us, and maybe, there are some minds that think the words are interchangeable in law. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yeah.
But,
I was telling James this afternoon that there is some case law out there where a judge ruled that the word shall actually means may. And
right.
it's not really, it's not
Yeah.
good law. Shall is shall, may is may. And as far as I know, and as far as I can remember.
But as long as we're going to stay focused, that the council was, well, not telling us what to do, but wanted to make certain that they be reviewing this charter at a minimum of 10 years. And if they had to do it more often at the option of the council, they could. And that's
Yeah,
why,
of course.
that was a
6
big
votes.
piece of it.
Yep.
Because, technically, they wouldn't even have to reopen it if there were, unless you make it a little stronger. The dynamic changes of finance, especially in dynamic changes of the world.
Mr. Chair, I guess my question,
Consistent with what most towns in Prague are doing.
Mr. Chair, I guess my question is, if it's just going to be optional for the council, why even bother having a year period in there? Why specify it at all? If
Well,
it's just
that's
optional,
what-
they can do it whenever the
Yeah,
heck they want to. And what does 10 years
Yeah.
even mean if it becomes optional?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. You wouldn't have any of
That's also a very good point.
it.
Yep.
Maybe that's why it's not in the charter now. I don't know. But I can
Yeah.
only tell you what came down from the council. They were looking to be more specific about it. And they weren't making suggestions on that particular change from the council. They were pretty specific that they wanted to develop language that would provide them with a maximum of 10 years and some ability to do it sooner. So if that's no longer the council's desire, then we could go ahead and eliminate it, but that wasn't what came to us from the council.
I just have a real hard time with language that compels a totally different body, an elected body, that compels them to do something. I really have a hard time with that. You're telling an elected body 10 years from now what they have to do. I'm not sure that's smart, and I'm not even sure
Well-
if that would be it would be held up.
Well, I mean, there are parts in the charter that if they were never reviewed, could be a detriment to the public. There could be things in there and are things in there that could be detriment if they weren't reviewed.
Sure.
I mean,
And-
let's take
and
a
you're doing
minor
that now.
one. Let's take a small one where the mayor was handcuffed in terms of removing certain people because they no longer met the definition of an elector or a resident. They left town, didn't leave a forwarding address. You know, the old Elvis thing, no such number, no such zone. And that was slowing things down. So if there were no charter review, and what we've recommended to change, that would be a constant problem. The dollar amount at a percentage of an advance is a metric that's been accepted by many towns in municipalities and cities within 169 towns. Go fact check it if you like. And not to have a decent metric for a referendum issue on a flat number. And you say exceeds, well, my God, it could be 20 million, it could be 50 million. I have a real problem with it, but
Mr. Chair? I think if I remember the discussion, you know, one of the points I think you raised was they wanted a revision to this every 10 years to take the politics out of appointing a charter review commission and just make it automatic. But I could be recalling that incorrectly, but I thought that was part of the conversation.
I didn't bring that up. I don't know who.
No, that's correct. The council in their discussion wanted to ensure that oftentimes charter revision is viewed as political. It's, you know, if someone, for example, there's a supermajority right now, I happen to be part of it. And so the caution is that you don't want it to be viewed as a political thing. You want it to be viewed as a matter of process and procedure, that for the betterment of the town, you would review, for example, you know, we asked for you to review the monetary amounts and the shall and the may, and certain things that we think as time has gone on, it's been about 10 years since the last charter revision, that we wanted to ensure that it still continues to fit what needs to fit for today. And it meets the needs of the town, and continues to. So that was the rationale, and we wanted to, by nature of making it a timed thing, that it's every 10 years, whether it's, so that it's not political, so that it's an automatic every 10 years, it gets reviewed. If it needed to be reviewed sooner because there was something going on, then it still could be. But
Well-
trying to take that political nature out of it and make it a matter of process and procedure.
Well, I'm saying based on what you're saying as we went through it, that's the language we included.
Yes, I'm in agreement with you. I'm listening to the town attorney kind of indicating that he doesn't think that's
I mean, this is
perhaps best
bad.
practice. I'm trying to
This is what
understand.
came from the council. Include a mandated review of the charter every 10 years, set up a committee, make up and time frame for review. And then we added at the council's option. The council could elect to do it sooner, but at least within 10 years. That's just passing on the thought process to you.
Attorney Ancona, what is your rationale for saying that's not best practice, just so I understand?
Well, Your Honor, I mean, you are compelling a future elected body to do something. And there is plenty of case law that says you can't do that. I'm not saying that you can't put it in here and say, yes, we shall do that. It just may not be held up if somebody challenges it. That's all I'm saying. And I like the idea of may.
Well, this is what's gonna happen anyway. We're gonna send up recommendations, and the council's gonna meet with us, I presume, to discuss all of these things.
Mhm.
And we'll provide the information and we'll have those discussions, to see what they wanna do. And then ultimately, as you well know, what the public wants to do with it, once it comes up for voting.
Sure.
But why don't we continue, please?
Just a moment. If Commissioner Borup's all set?
Yeah, thanks. I think my
Okay,
questions have been answered.
Anthony had his hand up, and so did Chris, but we'll go down
Yes,
now.
Commissioner.
The only thing I was thinking is there a way to just to bring up, rather than going through a full review and having a committee review the charter, et cetera, is there a way of putting verbiage in there that says just that it'll be brought up for vote with the council to say whether they're going to review it or not, which isn't compelling them to take action. It's just compelling them to bring it to a vote.
To consider it every 10 years. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
That's a
that's actually,
possibility.
yeah, that's actually pretty smart. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So how would you write that then, Mr. Town Attorney?
I guess we could figure something out.
Thank you, Anthony. Good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, it was good.
Okay, next, please.
All right, where are we? Town manager. So it's the residency requirement for the town manager. I've been doing a lot of research in this and looking at case law and constitutional law. And as we go forward in the next couple of years or so, I think if there's a challenge, I don't think it will survive a constitutional challenge based on equal protection provisions of the U.S. Constitution and the Connecticut Constitution, where we have a specific right to live wherever we want to live, regardless of our employment. So, and besides the legal aspect of it, I always think about, the guy in his 40s who has a family somewhere. He lives in, I don't know, let's say Glastonbury. He's the perfect candidate for Newington to be town manager, but he's got a couple of kids that he doesn't want to uproot. I just think it's an antiquated provision, and I would think we would serve ourselves really well to remove the residency requirement.
Well, we did take a vote on the charged item by the council. And all of the commissioners voted in favor of the ones we did. But we also looked at the items that the commission has plugged in, and this was one of them, and we had eliminated the language. So I don't know where if that got lost.
No, it is
No, that is what he's
removed.
saying.
He's just commenting
Yep.
on each of the
I'm just
changes.
commenting.
Okay.
Yep, just going through them.
And
So
Commissioner
we,
Meyer.
the
I'd
majority
be glad not to
consensus
comment on
is that-
anything.
The majority consensus is that we did eliminate it.
All right.
Commissioner Meyer has his hand raised.
But again, I want to make it clear that we have to send a complete comprehensive package to the council that we did that, not because we had
Sure.
a whim, but because we had testimony and we also had information come in that there's a trend data there. And then it's ultimately, again, up to the public what they want to do and decide. Mr.
Yeah,
Minor.
absolutely.
Thank you, Joe. Just one quick comment, and I just would be curious to Ben's perspective on it, is in the form of government we have our town manager. In the first selectman or strong mayor setting, both of those have residency requirement by statute. With having the town manager essentially the parallel to that position in the other two forms, why would you argue that we shouldn't have it in this setting, but the other two are required by statute unless they change the statute on it? Am I correct in that?
Yes, because they are elected officials. They are what we considered a first selectman would be like a strong mayor, and of course a strong mayor is a strong mayor. We have the council manager form of government, and the town manager is really an employee.
Okay, so you're seeing a differentiation between them being the CEO for the town versus the other two examples. That's all I'm trying to draw the same parallel is.
Yep.
As far as I'm concerned,
Exactly.
they're the same across the board. It's just the setting is different by our form of government.
Well, I think it's very different because, first selectman is elected and so is the mayor. Town manager is not elected by the voters.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't you move on, please?
603, pretty basic change there. Looks fine.
That's the library
Then,
trustees.
Yeah. And then 605, pretty basic.
Oh, Board of
Yeah.
Parks and Rec. Yeah,
the membership.
right.
And then I guess the next one is 606, Development Commission. And you guys
Right.
added some language. That
That's,
seems to make
statute
sense.
language, yeah. That's Connecticut statute language that empowers development commissions to do the things that are stated there.
Right. That's good.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Just on section 605, sorry to go back. I guess I was unclear. Didn't we leave it at there would be 11 members with no change? And now we're saying
Well,
7.
they came in again, Mr. Mr. Patalico and Mr. Woods came in the last meeting and wanted the 7 again, but they wanted it where they had 2 alternates. So we went from the original call that we got, or original discussion in February or March on 11, that didn't work because they had quorum issues.
Yeah.
And then the quorum issues got fixed for a temporary period of time, but they were concerned it wasn't going to be a continuum of time. And so they switched their position to 5 and 2 with 2 alternates, or 3 and 2 with 2 alternates, because they didn't want overstating majority.
I don't
They
see
were fine
language
with
around
that.
alternates
No.
down in this.
And that was another
That
issue.
wasn't our suggestion. That came from the library board.
Or Parks and Rec.
No, we're in Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, rather. And so they're the ones that had suggested initially 7. And then they went back to 11, and then they went back to 7. So that's where we came up with 7. It was an efficiency number so that they can make their quorums. But they did have a discussion and a concern about an abundance of majority, I should say, being on that.
Majority
Yeah.
membership, correct.
That was the only discussion.
Question, maybe it's for the town attorney, but is there a necessity to have membership listed in the charter for this commission? As was mentioned by another commission that came forward with concerns for quorum, they had mentioned possibly the idea of keeping in the charter that there must be the commission, but that the membership could be created by ordinance so that it could be changed more easily if need be in the future to meet with quorums or with different needs that may arise.
Yeah, Mayor, there's no reason to have a number in there. You could do it all by ordinance.
I'm just mentioning that because I think if we're seeing this back and forth about what the number should be, maybe there's issues with quorum. If we could try 7 and 2, but then, if that doesn't work, or if someone else doesn't agree, then ordinance still would allow us a venue to change membership requirements, going through a process, having a public hearing, 2 council meetings. It still takes a process and it still requires public input, but it wouldn't be a change to the charter. It wouldn't be, as difficult to do, so to speak, if the need arises. So I would just throw that out for the commission's consideration.
Yeah, James and I discussed that this afternoon, and it does make a lot of sense to leave the numbers out.
I
know this is a different
mean, this
idea,
is
but
late in the game.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, I'm not being critical about it. It's just that the input we got from if you can sell it to the entity involved, I guess that's fine. But this commission can only really base its facts on the testimony that we get. And that testimony was a number, not created by us, but by them. But if you're
Right.
comfortable, Mayor.
No, Mr.
Right,
Chairman,
no
I'm not opposed to the language that you have worked so hard on. I'm not.
Oh, I don't
I
care
guess
about
just
that
because
part
the
of it.
attorney's on the call, I figured I'd ask the question.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the council, that may be a
No, no.
discussion that the council needs to have if need be. I don't know.
At our pay grades, Mayor, I'm never.
I just hear you saying how,
Nancy may
it-
be
you know, in
offended, though.
February, the discussion was one thing, then it came back as another thing, and now, you know,
Alright.
Commissioner Borup is asking a question about it too, and it just makes me kind of think, I wonder if the numbers need to be in the charter versus an
I do
ordinance.
recall the ordinance thing.
That was
Yeah.
under the
But the
senior
last time
disabled.
they rolled in,
Yes.
they were still
Yeah.
locked in on the 7, but if you think the council would be more comfortable
Removing the numbers.
putting a footnote there,
I'm not, I would not pretend to speak on behalf of the council tonight on this subject at all. That was just a thought that, that I had, because I know most committees and commissions are created through ordinance in terms of membership, so. Unless there's a reason that this needs to be in the charter that way, it might just make sense to change it. And that could be something the council decides. The commission doesn't have to make that change at this late hour. If you're comfortable with the language you have to forward to the council, then we could.
no, as
certainly
I
consider
recall,
it.
we were just working on the basis that they were uncomfortable because they couldn't get their quorums,
Mhm.
like the agent commission.
And that's who brought forward the idea of
That's
the
been like
ordinance
what?
change and that kind of thing, yeah,
So,
yep.
if you feel you can modify, but can we footnote this somewhere, or what do you recommend, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, the council's gonna make the decision, so yeah, you can footnote it, sure.
Do we want to do that?
That's up to the commission. Like I said, I'm not advocating for that. It just was a question for the attorney to know whether it needs to be in the charter with membership or not.
It doesn't, but I will say that I think 7 is a very workable number for Parks and Rec. I mean, it was at 11 because that was drafted at a time where everybody wanted to be on Parks and Rec.
Right.
So I can't imagine they're gonna have any trouble, with a quorum with the number 7.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with the numbers that are on the screen. It was just a question, really.
No. Okay, Ben, why don't you move on?
All right, 606, you just added some language.
Hold on.
Statute language.
Commissioner Minor does have his hand raised.
Yes, Mr. Minor.
No, didn't go down. Disregard.
Oh, okay.
Not touching that.
There it is.
I'm sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. On 606, you guys added the Development Commission may conduct research, et cetera. And again, I like the may in this circumstance. Yeah, I mean, giving them the flexibility because we just don't know what the future holds. Maybe there isn't funding to do these types of things, but it's nice to have it in there in that regard.
You're the attorney in the room, so I'm gonna give you all the credit on this one. The statute.
Well, I can ask a good one.
Connecticut says shall, so is that the same judge you were talking about?
Exactly, Joe. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
And then,
All right. Either way, they're gonna feel a little better about themselves having some language in there, so.
so,
Okay.
The next one is the,
609,
yeah, the auditor.
that's language that was a suggestion of
Finance Director.
finance director to have an actual committee, like many other towns do, in place. And so we looked at other towns, and that language is an accumulation of what other towns are requiring the audit committee to do.
And again, boards and commissions is going to be incumbent upon the council to actually create it. So,
Right.
I mean, whether it's needed or not, that's not for me to say. That's
Yeah, we're just
Our
hearing
finance.
what staff said,
yep. So it's fine.
and I believe Mr. Chapman was there the first evening and thought it was appropriate to.
All right, good. And I guess we go right, I think, to the end from here.
902.
Oh, 902.
That
Oh,
was one of the non-recommendations.
Yeah.
oh, but yeah, this personnel provision.
Yeah. Well, you know the background on that, Ben.
There are a multitude of factors involved with the personnel provisions, and there are questions at play right now as we speak legally, and I am recommending that we don't touch it at all.
And on the basis of your recommendation and the telephone call that the chair got from the educational part of this issue, we didn't place a recommendation. We initially tried some language and it was critiqued and didn't seem to be beneficial to either side, depending on what, both sides decide to do. I guess it's a concern of the commission that there's this issue out there, since it was brought to our attention about certified, non-certified employees and the mix of the non-certified that have numerous functions that report to the superintendent or assistant superintendent in the school system. And then that was further confused by the fact that the state of Connecticut decided to create another certified position, non-instructional, and with the same requirements for degrees in education that a teacher would have to have, but not be able to go into a classroom and teach. That we're running, and I'm not criticizing it, it's kind of developed on its own, but from the history that you have provided the commission with, this has been going on since Washington was a private and hasn't gotten any better
1994.
since then, I don't think.
Yep.
Mr. Chair,
That's
just a
right.
quick comment. I
Yes.
mean, it's a shame that we can't take action and somehow clear this up, because every time these sides, which is all just Newington, go at it over this, the taxpayers are paying for every one of these battles over this, and that's a real shame.
Do you have anything else on that, Ben? I guess not. Okay. Why don't we move on? Still got Ben with us? Yeah, Ben's still there.
And then we go to amendment. And as we discussed earlier, this would be the language, the 10-year language. And it's, are you going to compel the future town council or not? That's the question. And I do like the idea that they should, maybe we should put in there that they should take a vote. At a minimum, you could ask that be done. So we could work on that type of language and see what you think.
I like that idea.
Okay, but again, this is what came down, include a mandated review of the charter every 10 years. And set up committee to make in time frame for review.
Well, maybe we could
So,
put an amendment to that and say, like Anthony was suggesting, every 10 years, review it and take a vote if they should open and actually make changes.
Yeah, I really think that's smart. Every 10 years, the council shall review the charter and vote whether or not to open it to make changes.
well, isn't that
To
the
amend
same
it.
thing that we've got here?
Yeah. I guess if you use the language
10 years is
may,
10 years, you don't
right.
Well, it's,
like the way we say it. This is as good as I'm gonna get
I
tonight.
do,
It's been a long day.
I do see the difference
yeah,
between saying that the council shall create a commission versus shall review charter and determine if a commission needs to be opened, established, yeah. So I do see the difference in the language, and from a council perspective, and I'm only one member of a 9-member council, when we gave charges to this commission, it was with the intent that you would review them and determine if they make sense, and with the help of the attorney, then make recommendations back to us. So if the commission and the attorney deem that it makes more sense to have it as a possibility, but that every 10 years it has to at least be considered.
right.
Then that makes sense. Then that can be the recommendation and it's brought back to the council.
So how would you vote on this? If you're in favor, vote shall. If you're not, may. No, this is good. That's it. I'm gonna stop.
No, he's not.
All right, Ben, you're the doctor.
Right. Get a second opinion.
I will.
So essentially for for the language for that section, it would be something to the effect of, in the second line, every 10 years,
The charter will be
the town
reviewed.
council will review the town charter and determine if a charter commission
Should be
needs to
open.
be established for official review or something to that effect.
Right, right. We joke about the shall versus may, but you could say the council shall review it and may choose to open the charter.
Wow.
There you go. Use both of them.
That shows you where the priorities are.
Yeah, we got both in there. That's
It
pretty
is
good.
different, but it still kind of ticks the box for making sure that it's reviewed every 10 years, at least in some way, shape, or
Let
form.
me ask you this.
Right.
and, As a member of the public, if you wanted the charter open, do you have any ability to do that? Would that be through a private initiative, or how would you do that?
You
Through a
can't.
private initiative?
You-
So maybe
I don't
say,
see how-
say that this got into the booth and people voted on what you're suggesting, and then somebody else down the road wanted to open up the charter for some reason, a logical reason. How would they do that?
No, no, remember, we
couldn't
have,
do
we
that.
have, we have charter statutes that govern all of this. So that would be a nightmare.
Well, that's why I'm suggesting it. I'm just curious, that's all.
Yeah, nope.
Okay,
Actually,
Shouldn't
that is an
there-
allowance.
Yeah, there
Go
is,
ahead.
because if the committee decides there is a reason to open the charter, there's an amendment for that.
7-89 of the general statutes allows for by petition and warning of signatures by ink or indelible pencil. So there is a process for it, which would be the same as our current initiative process as well.
right.
But this one's enumerated in statute.
All by state statute though, and that's the last thing you want to be putting into our charter.
Right.
Oh, I'm not suggesting we do that. I was just curious, that's all.
No.
I wanted to take you off unsuccessfully. Okay.
Well done.
Are there any other comments that you'd like to make to us on it, Ben?
I have none, Mr. Chairman. Nice work, everybody. I know it's an arduous task. And and at the end of the day, I've done this a couple of times. At the end of the day, you think, geez, we barely did anything, because nobody sees all the ground game, all the work you've done. And then there are a few language changes and everybody says, well, what have they been doing for months? You've done a lot of work. Let me tell you, I know it. I know for a fact. And I
We
want to,
appreciate that.
yep, and I want to thank
very
you for all of that. Yep.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Did you have anything?
All right,
Nancy?
thank you, guys.
Nope.
Okay,
Good.
All right, take care, everybody.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right,
The
bye.
next item is adoption of proposed charter revisions. Mr. Town Clerk, where are we with,
Well, that will be dependent upon the commission, Mr. Chairman. Based upon the town attorney's recommendations, is the commission in agreement with his recommendation, or do you wish to revert to your original language as originally presented to him? And that will be really the main discussion that we'll have under this item.
now, how about the item that, he said to leave alone that you were concerned about?
Section 410 is what you're
Yeah.
referring to
Right.
there. That will be your decision. The issue that we would run into specifically to this is that it is a amalgam of meeting by town meeting as well as a requirement for referendum. So that is where some of the confusion comes into that section.
Even as it exists?
Not as it currently exists in our
So
adopted
if we
charter.
left it alone, we wouldn't have that issue, but we'd still have the confusion of the dates.
We'd have the time constraints on it, yes,
Yeah.
which if we don't ever have it happen to us in the next 10 years would work out fine.
Right.
We can only hope. And we haven't had it happen in at least the last 10 years that I'm aware of, based upon the language never being touched in the previous charter revision.
So we'd have to bring that concern up to the council when we presented
Correct. Yeah.
our issues.
Yeah, and the reasoning behind that is specifically that it affects multiple sections that were not realized during the original review.
Okay, well, let's kind of go around the table. Commissioner Anthony, any concerns about moving forward with the town attorney's recommendations for modifications and changes?
I have no concerns.
Commissioner Capella,
I have no concerns.
Commissioner Minor.
Still muted.
Huh?
Still muted.
I'm trying. Yes.
I know.
What did he say?
I missed that.
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Chris?
Keep going in and out on audio, Joe.
Okay. Kevin?
Guess it really depends on which one.
Commissioner Minor, I didn't hear your comment, I'm sorry. You got cut off.
No, I'm fine with
Okay,
as we have it right now.
thank you. Somebody isn't fine with it. Okay.
Kevin, do you have any questions?
No, I think at this point, it may be a little unclear to folks who are listening exactly what we're pushing on to, what we're approving. I know we just went through it all, but,
Well, we have been repetitive on
And that,
what we came up with for a recommendation. I think the only really extensive changes or not changes is one to hold off on the initiative,
section 410.
section 410. And then the language, rather than specifying a specific mandated date on the charter review, that would be another language change. And my only other concern would be as it applies to, what is it, 4.0, where we put the 1.50%.
407, I believe it is.
407.
Where are we? 408.
Yeah, where all the other language is left in there.
Now,
I mean, I thought ours was much more precise and clear than what came back for review.
no additional language is in there. We did do the strikeout, so I can show on screen the clean version of that for you.
Okay, why
In
don't you-
between both of those.
All
So
right.
if you want, we can go through each of
Yeah.
the changes individually.
So that, to Kevin's point, that might be clear for the public to see what we ran through versus the adjustments we made.
Just the red strikeout is the original language. The blue is what the committee recommended. What's the
Right.
green?
The green was a secondary change. I moved the language to a different location within that same paragraph.
Okay,
But that was a proposed change.
from the commission.
Okay,
Correct.
so what
So
I
that's
do,
a green.
let's go through it then.
So, in this
Section
aspect.
403,
Section 403.
we
We
had
changed to-
originally put a time of 7 o'clock to accommodate the request. And the town attorney said it'd be preferable not to do that. And to add, well, where's his language? Right there? Time to be determined during the adoption of the annual meeting schedule.
Correct.
And
That
you
would be
seem
the
to be
clean look.
all comfortable with that?
Mr. Chair, do we want to vote on each one as we go through, or what do we want to do?
Well, I was gonna take it as a total. Does
Okay.
anybody? Because we've been through it many times and I think this one's pretty clear.
Yep.
On the face of it.
We could get a consensus from them on each
Yeah,
one.
we did do a consensus under our recommendations,
Right.
but I think it's preferable to certify it with a vote when we get done.
Okay.
Just so we're done.
Okay with language on that one. So our next section would be under section 408. Just a moment to get to that one for us.
We're gonna have another public participation session, gentlemen, so I appreciate your patience.
All right. So yes, there's a lot of cross out additions, changes in this section.
That's good.
The main language itself reads, no resolution authorizing the issuance of bonds or notes. Now, there was a small change that was made from that one, which was other than notes in the amount of and such on. And that was due to a conversation with the finance director where she said we would never issue bonds or notes under that amount. So the reasoning behind that was, I believe, historical in nature, as a lot of towns in previous history would float bonds and notes for payroll and such at that time period where it's not a common practice nowadays. So she did make that one recommendation, which the town attorney reviewed as a change. And then, of course, we added in our 1.5% of general fund appropriation in the current year, shall become effective the same way of a vote by referendum from the public. And then any special appropriation up to the 1.5, but in excess of 375. So we're eliminating that less than, more than statements that were really confusing to the public and to staff in general. So this one.
Because that's in the original charter.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's the way that it was added into there that was the most confusing for everyone. So now there's the breakdown saying the range now of 375 to 1%, 1.5% is ordinance. And then your next section
Right,
is
which we put in.
any appropriation in amount not to exceed 375 is the council's normal provision of a standard resolution. So all of those pieces are now broken out as the separate items, not included.
What's the magic of the 375? I never understood that.
The 375 was just
Yeah,
a
we're
random
back to-
number.
Well,
If
we're
you
back to
wanted
a
to,
plug number.
I will tell you, if you wanted to go up, the finance director did not have a problem with that. She did consider it slightly low. But it's just
And
to,
I don't know. All right.
yeah. And then the additional language of the no more than 2 special appropriations, she thought it could be restrictive, but was hoping we would ever see that happen anyway. So she was fine with that specific language. And then you have your additional
Well,
language.
that was there to provide some cushion to the council not being bombed with a million concepts.
Exactly.
Right?
And then you've got your
And
definition of your
committees
special.
developing by osmosis rather than being appointed. I mean, it was getting really loosey-goosey.
Yes.
So I think we did the town a favor, in particular, the commission did on that one.
Correct. And then you've got your new definition for special appropriation, specifically to a budget act. Now, you did have a secondary language into here. The finance director requested that to come out specifically on this standing appropriation. Specifically for the reason that under the, where is it? Under special appropriation, you already have defined that the main appropriation is a budget act. So she didn't feel that adding in the standing appropriation was necessary and may have confused the public.
I would respectfully disagree with her because state statute speaks to standing appropriations so that let's give an example. Mr. Chapman was concerned about putting money away for road repairs. And the fact that another council could come in and then cut that money or eliminate it altogether so that there's a certain mileage of roads he wants to do, was in the state of Connecticut uses this General Assembly and a standing appropriation that would be foreboding. You don't touch standing appropriations unless you go through an awful lot of different processes to do with it, so that if a certain infrastructure needs have to be met over so many years, that money's going to be available to use and continue on. But if she's not comfortable with it, then I guess that.
Well, part of that
That's the end
tied
of it.
also into the CIP portion of that, where that is a continuing
Right.
fund. And adding the language in that was there for the standing appropriation was replicated into the CIP fund, which created the confusion.
I think it was more reflective of the town manager's desire to make sure that, not particular to him, but just as a business manager, based on his experience, to continue the funding of a situation that was going to be repetitive in nature. So if the fire department came to us and said, we're going to want X vehicles for so many years, rather than shell shock, not that you'd be creating shell shock, but a large number of which be concern to the council, and then the concern of how to fund it or when to fund it, this would be a station of payments into those kinds of appropriations, so.
I still have the original language
The
there. We
state
can
of
still
Connecticut
play.
uses it effectively, but if it's not a comfort level, that's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna,
So just for clarification purposes, when we talk about CIP, that would be part of the main support budget as mentioned in the language here. So if we set aside in the CIP account a certain amount of money for either roofing, I'm thinking of things that are typically a larger dollar amount.
well, I'm
That we
thinking of
try
the
not to
study-
bond for.
I'm thinking of the study you did with all the buildings, the old. symbol.
Yep,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that kind
yeah,
of-
so I'm thinking like,
Yeah.
we have a lot of roofs that need to be replaced,
Right.
and the high school roof, in order to do it, if we do it in phases, it's under the amount. But if you do it as a whole project, it would be over the amount currently in the charter for referendum. So, if we appropriated $2 million through CIP, and it was above that 1.5%, it would not be considered a special appropriation, because it went through budget process and was adopted with public input,
Right.
in terms of the way this language is written. I just want to make sure that it's clear that that's what we're saying, correct? So if we put that amount into the CIP account, which has been an argument right now, this has been an argument, right?
yeah.
So right now, if
CIP
we
has.
put 2 million into a CIP account for a project, the argument could be made that whether that's a special appropriation or not, and that's been the confusion. So I think this language
Yeah,
clears
we
that up and
define
says as long as it's voted on as part of the main budget structure, which CIP is, then it would not have to go out to referendum. It's kind of done its due, we've done our due process. Public has had a chance to weigh in through the budgetary process, and then it's considered just part of the budget appropriation, not a special appropriation. Am I right on that? Okay. I'm looking at you to shake your head at me because I need.
That is exactly the language that the finance director discussed.
Right.
And I went up
Wow.
specifically to say, does this make sense? And she was like, no, this muddies the waters. It confuses it to what it means.
Okay,
And-
because when I see that main budget support
Right,
piece, that clears it up for me
Well,
in my
that
mind.
definition came from the town attorney.
right.
The council
Okay.
and the commission adopted it.
Okay.
That goes back to March or something like that, but that's.
Yeah.
been kicking around.
Because that's the
Beginning
biggest
point.
sticking point, I think, for the council is being able to complete what I consider, and I think the counselors, for the most part, consider regular business, like a roofing project, just needs to happen. So if we have leaks, active leaks in the building, and we need to fix it, to go out to a referendum doesn't make a ton of sense if
Yeah.
it's already been approved through a process that the public had input in.
But that would be a referendum, a special.
If it's outside of the
Yeah,
budget process,
well, that's
yes.
the definition that we're suggesting based on what the town attorney, but what I'm saying is a standing appropriation would be within the budget. But if she's not comfortable with the definition, then that's fine.
Yeah, her response was she considers a standing appropriation.
You
to
can
be the
tell her
budget
that Joe
adoption.
Harpy's
To be
not
the budget
comfortable.
adoption.
You can
Yeah,
tell her that
yeah.
Joe Harpy's not comfortable with another flat number in the charter, 375,000. Okay, let's move on.
Counselor Minor, sorry, oh my goodness. Commissioner Minor has his hand up.
Yes, sir, Mr. Minor.
Thank you. Just to clarify this, James. So with the way that it's written now, it's taking the process of CIP funding out of the purview of the council until its final adoption and into that of the town manager, and to set a multi-year plan that can't be deviated from. Am I understanding that correct? By the
That is
term
correct. So the
standing
manager would
appropriation?
put forward his proposal. The council would act upon that under their budget process requirements. Those funds would be a part of the annual appropriation, therefore not needing that additional language.
All right,
Makes
and
sense.
it also would lock in the standing appropriation multi-year beyond the term of a sitting council per se.
Correct, because the CIP fund is a continuing fund that can be added throughout multiple years in order to finance a full project, correct?
And that's a standing appropriation.
Right,
She
so
wants to leave it
theoretically,
alone.
yeah, so theoretically, on a 5-year set, it's not supposed to be deviated from.
Correct. That's
But
the
what-
purpose of the CIP plan. We know that sometimes has not been the history.
Correct.
Right, but there's a difference between funding and actually using the funds,
Committing, yes, okay.
okay? You can't bind a future council to commit funds. You just can't do it.
Right. Okay, Yeah, that's what I'm just trying to clarify, because again,
Well,
The
you can do
CIP
it, but-
in its historical nature has been, multi-year, but unfortunately, sometimes year over year changes and you're not getting the load you wanted to get done in year 5 done because that sitting council doesn't wish to pursue that particular project.
You're absolutely right.
But we
Okay.
had 3 councils that did the high school windows back in the day, where the money was locked in under, call it any other name you want, a special appropriation that stayed in place until the high school got the new windows, otherwise it wouldn't have.
Right,
Yeah,
so
Joe,
not
no,
that,
I understand that, but at any point, a future
There's
council
gotta
can
be
say, no,
legacy
I don't want to fund it.
somewhere. There's gotta be legacy to government. If you don't have legacy, you have nothing. You have dysfunctionality.
I agree, and that's the intent of CIP, but you cannot bind a future
Okay.
council to make an appropriation like that.
Okay. All right,
okay,
let me move on.
Well, no, we need to determine the language that the commission is going to put forward. So that is why we can swap between each. We can determine if we want to bring a piece back, but that's why it's available here.
All right, let's go around the table then. Anthony?
I'm a little confused now at what we're talking about in terms of, and here's my confusion. If you talk about continuity of government and you talk about legacy, how do you appropriate $1.5 million for windows for the high school over a 5-year period and then pull the rug out 2 years into it? That doesn't make any sense.
Right. I agree.
So how,
but the problem is, as Ben indicated, you cannot bind a future council to expend anything, which
Where's
Unless it
that in
goes
the
to-
charter?
unless it goes to bonds or notes. Am I
Where's
correct
that
in
in the
that?
charter that you can't bind a council?
There's case law on that, Joe.
Well, you sign contracts with your employees.
That's different. No, that's different. That's different. If the town manager binds the town as the chief executive officer, then that's a contract. You can still break that contract. There's no law against breaking contracts. You just have to pay damages. So a future council can say, no, we don't want to abide by that contract. We're done with the windows. 2 floors is enough, but you're going to have to pay expectation damages to the contractor.
okay,
I think we're taking ourselves way too seriously. Let's
Yeah.
move on. Let's move on to the next one.
Well,
Or we have the.
I think that as elected officials, we are expected and elected to do what's right for the town. And so if there's a 3-year plan that's in place and in the works, it would be right that our constituents would expect that we would honor that 3-year plan unless there was a reason not to. And in my experience, I've been, in politics for 19 years now. I haven't seen anyone disregard a 3-year plan unless there was a budgetary reason that we couldn't fund it or something came up or changed it. So I think we're getting stuck in the weeds on this. I think
okay.
the CIP plan is intended the way it is intended. It's written the way it's written. We took it out of a committee's hands. It's in the town manager to bring it forward, and the entire council weighs in on it and has to buy into it. So while we're not binding the next council, so to speak, typically all 9 members of a council don't change at the same time. So the next council would still have members that were part of the process and could explain that and bring it forward as a need, and it would continue on. So I think you're getting worried about something that isn't really a worry in terms of the language here. It's really the dollar amount and what we're looking to be able to expend in terms of this language. So is in my estimation, the language on here meets what the council had asked the commission to clear up for us. So I think this language makes sense, and if the town attorney's fine with it, then I would say that it makes sense for me.
Yeah, I'm
That
good
makes-
with it.
That makes sense.
Commissioner Minor.
Commissioner Minor,
No, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse on this. We can send it in. Ultimately, it's not our decision. The council can go ahead and mull it around themselves and make a determination. I'd rather just do that.
okay, let's move on.
So on item number 408, we are going to, as shown.
Well, we didn't vote on it yet. We're gonna vote on
Right.
all of them as a total.
All right, 409. Current language. Actually, let's make the change on may and shall right now. Discussed before. So that would be the revised language.
You want to comment on that one again, Ben, please, emergency ordinance?
Okay, so, we flipped it. There shall be a public hearing. And my opinion is that if it's a true emergency, I think 30 days is too long for an informational public hearing.
It's too far out, you're saying?
Yes.
So what would you recommend there?
I mean, this is an emergency ordinance, so within,
ASAP?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we had none of this during COVID, and we should have.
Okay, I don't have an issue with it. Anybody else have an issue with ASAP?
I don't know what ASAP means.
As soon as possible?
No, I mean, what does that mean? That could be a year. I mean, are you suggesting we change 30 days to like 10 days or 12 days or 14
I
days
think
or
you're right.
2
I think you
days?
put some days down there. I agree. It could be a year. Yeah.
Well, I mean, an emergency, you don't know how many days you may need sooner than 10 days. An emergency, it could be,
You may need
Act
30
now.
days, yeah.
You should do maybe as soon as possible, but no later than 10 days. I don't know.
You know, I think the way the language is now, I mean, you could have it certainly far sooner than 30 days. It's within the first 30 days. And that's really, you know, again, you know, we talk about binding the council. Here, it gives them the leeway within the next 30 days to put something that's reasonable. And because we have no idea what emergency we're talking about here, you know, council should be accountable for reporting to the public. And I think a responsible council would have it as soon as they can within whatever, based on whatever that emergency is. So, you know, I don't know. 30 days is certainly within that time period, seems reasonable. It could be shorter, but then how much shorter? You wouldn't want to say within 2 days, right? Because who knows, what are weekends, all sorts of things going on, public notice.
Yeah. You don't know what the situation would be. This is just a suggested time period. That's all it is, because we have nothing now in there, so.
My question too is, in this language, it says public hearing versus public meeting or council meeting. So like, I'm going back to when we had the diesel fuel spill. We had a council meeting. I don't remember it being a public hearing, which is different in terms of how it's noticed and how it's handled.
Well, the
So
reason
are
for
we
that-
talking about a public hearing where it's just, because a public hearing would be more like to get public input
Well,
versus
that was our-
notify?
That was our thought, to collect information, to get an update on the cost, to get the council's view of how long this situation was gonna go on. Those kinds of things.
Because the other thing I'm thinking in terms of the language there says to state what the cost, like, we could give an estimate of a cost on that day, but in terms of like the diesel fuel spill, we didn't know the overall cost for much longer than 30 days.
This would
So-
also include money spent to year to, or whatever period, till the period of the meeting.
Yeah.
And what the projected expenditure was gonna be through the whole process.
Yeah, and we ended up adding it to every council meeting,
So
from
that-
my recollection, we just
Oh,
did
this
an
isn't
update
a
on every
criticism
council.
of the council, it's just
Right.
thought to give the public an opportunity to speak.
Okay.
Nancy, you got anything? Okay,
So I'll just.
yeah, we'll go with it the way it is.
Just as a notation, so when you are running into emergency meetings, so to speak, there are certain requirements of the posting of the votes and supplying of the minutes. So the votes of what's taken for that emergency are required to be filed within 48 hours. The minutes are required to be filed within 72 hours after the meeting, excluding a weekend or a holiday. So understand that information will be publicly available as well.
I don't want to get too complicated on this. We just want to keep the door open
Yep.
for the public that may be faced with a council that is not as receptive as the current one to doing things.
And it does say within 30 days,
Yeah.
so if
So
we
this
earlier
gives
than that,
you-
I can't say within
Yeah,
for 30 days.
and that's why the 30 days was there, to give you the reporting and notice periods.
Mhm.
That's all.
Okay.
Okay. Keep rolling. All right, get these gentlemen time.
Did everybody agree?
So
I think
410 is the discussion we had, which we chose by a basic consensus to not change at this time, but we'll make that finalized vote. And to revert back to original language.
We just need a consensus from the commission to revert back,
Yes.
basically.
And
Yeah.
Chair, I'm fine with reverting back to the original language.
Okay, Nancy,
No change, yep.
Anthony? Are you fine with the reverting back to the original language?
Yes.
On, I don't know, do you have the pamphlet? Does he see it?
It's on screen.
Oh, yeah, no,
Lower
yes,
section.
I,
Strike
On
out.
410,
yes, what we discussed earlier. I'm fine with the
Right.
original language.
Mr. Minor?
I'm fine to revert back.
Okay. Moving on.
Let's see, our next section will be 412. And that our new section C.
This is the one the town council may remove individuals appointed to non-elected boards and commissions once an appointee no longer meets the qualifications to serve, but not before making a reasonable effort to contact the individual by mail, email, or phone. As follows. Residency, the individual is no longer an elector or resident of the town of Newington. 2, attendance, the individual has failed to attend at least 75% of the regular meetings held during a calendar year unless excused. An appointee shall have an opportunity to appeal to an appeal hearing with the town council, which may be held in private or public. Should attendance issue be of a personal and private nature, the appointee may request a meeting with the mayor and minority leader to review the matter and to make a recommendation. And a recommendation shall be supplied to the council. So that would be a private meeting, I assume, with the mayor and the minority leader.
Mr. Chair, I think that section is new. We didn't see that in the
The
last
lower
version.
section, some of it has been changed based upon the meeting requirements.
Yep.
But I believe the only piece that I added to that, hold on one moment.
The last section I read.
Yeah,
Yeah, that last
that
paragraph.
recommendation, because if you're stuck at mayor and minority leader, it needs to go somewhere. So there needs to be a process to continue to the council for the recommendation.
Yeah, it shall be supplied to the town council. I don't know if they're saying the same thing there or not.
Seems fine to me, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Minor,
I'm fine with it.
Anthony,
Looks okay to me.
Nancy?
Yep.
Okay. Joe Harpy?
All right, so our next section is the section that we recommended moving to the end of the document, so 416 to 1005. If everybody's in agreement with taking it out of the council section and putting into the provision section.
I don't see a problem with it.
And we'll adjust the language
Anybody
as
have a problem
discussed.
with that?
So, Mr. Chair, just clarification, are we keeping the language as we have it here with a note to the council about just having them have a vote on whether to do it or not? Or are we actually voting on and saying we're gonna revise this language as we talked about, to mandate that the council review the charter and decide whether they're going to form a charter commission or not every 10 years.
Well, in ours, we followed the direction of the council to come up with a mandated date, and the town attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, you're recommending that it be kind of an open situation that they would vote on over some period of time to do it rather than a 10-year
Yeah,
period in there. Is that correct?
Right, didn't Anthony come up with some good language there? That,
Yeah.
wasn't it his
Thankfully,
idea
we have a
to,
transcript.
We'd be taking out the 10 years.
No, you
No.
need the 10 years.
No.
It just wouldn't be a
It wouldn't
mandatory
be a
formation of a
mandated,
commission. It would be a mandatory review of council to determine if a commission needs to be
Well, I mean, it
The-
wouldn't be as.
the shall and the
functional
may.
as mandated,
correct.
Right?
It wouldn't
The
be
shall and
required,
the
it would
may.
be required that they review.
Most of the towns have a mandated situation on the research I did on behalf of the council commission.
So is it satisfactory, Joe, is it satisfactory to say that the council shall review the charter every 10 years and may elect to open it if determination is made to review
Yeah, I
or
mean,
change anything?
Either that language in combination with Anthony's, I'm fine with it. I just, again, for the record, we were just following the
Yeah.
requirement that was asked of us to do it the way it came in.
And really,
And
the
my-
section we're under right now, the only discussion is, do we move it to 10:05 or do we leave it in this location? The language change would happen based on your decision at this point. So it either change here and we leave it, or we discuss the change under 10:05.
no,
And
no,
remove
James,
this
it goes to 10:05. That's where it belongs.
Right, but I have to get their approval on that one. That was just
Oh,
our
all right.
recommendation.
Well, I don't have
Oh,
a
sorry,
problem
okay.
going with it to 10:05.
Okay,
10:30.
let's not go to 10:30. All right, so we will strike this language completely from this section. And now we are on to manager.
Okay. And you had some comments on that, so because of the central importance of this, would you just review your comments on this section for the members of the public and the commission, please?
I don't remember what I said, but
Trying to make you look good,
Basic-
bud, come on.
I know, I appreciate that. I love doing things 3 and 4 times. So, but
We're not
the whole
saying you
point,
step- Uh,
the genesis of this is that really taking it out, the residency requirement, taking it out so that you can broaden the pool of applicants. And frankly, I don't think it would survive a constitutional challenge in the future.
Okay. Well, I have no problem with the recommendation to move forward. Anthony,
I'm in agreement.
Mr. Minor,
No, I respectfully disagree on this one, but we'll keep it moving.
Evan,
Yeah, let's move it forward. I agree.
all right.
All right. Next section is really section 6, more so, as a discussion of membership. The one we started with was the Board of Parks and Recreation, oh, sorry, Library Trustees. Let's jumped over them.
I don't have any problem with 603.
Looks good.
Anyone have any issues with 603?
Nope.
Yeah. 605? Are we going to 605 now?
Once we get a consensus on 603, yes.
Yeah, no one had an
Got
issue.
everybody? Okay. So 603, 605, okay.
Boards of Parks and Rec. And the mayor, or both the town attorney and the mayor, recommending that this could be better handled through ordinance?
No,
As a
I-
suggestion, or?
The town attorney's comment was that he does not see a problem with the language as proposed by the commission. I'm fine with that.
Okay,
If the council determines that an ordinance makes more sense, we can do that at our table. but you can stick with the language you have. That's certainly up to the commission.
Yep.
Anyone have an issue with 605?
No.
Okay, we'll move on.
All right, next section is 606.
Okay, that again is statutory language that supports the strength and actions that can be undertaken by the Development Commission. There was reference to this statute in the current charter, to be honest about it, but I personally felt that it had to be spelled out because they don't know it. The commission currently is not aware that they can do the things that this Connecticut State statute provides them with. That's just a matter of fact. And I think they can play a key role in the support of economic development in a more centralized way. Anybody have an issue with that? Okay, moving on. Got a
There.
consensus?
Language. All right, our next section will be 609, the auditor.
This again was requested by staff. They come from the finance department.
Correct.
And they feel they wanted to get a little more input and in the process of RFP for the audit firm. This committee would have input into the askings on the RFP, the request for proposal of any audit firm. And this committee would also be more involved in the process of the audit as it goes through each department in the town. It also would review the standard letter that the audit firm issues after the audit's completed. I don't know if that letter is shown to the town council presently, but that letter deals with not major, but minor concerns that they've noted in the audit process or the financial process of the town. I'm not suggesting there are any. I'm just saying what the letter does. And this audit committee would have an opportunity to review that letter, make recommendations, and review it with finance director, town manager, and the town council. And other towns are using this function to enhance the audit process in each of the towns, and so that it gives a more of a management feeling to the whole process as you go through it. And it doesn't obstruct any other group currently brought on by an ordinance that's functioning in some capacity in this thing. It more or less specifies this in particular what the audit committee could do to assist. And we put down a few of the points, but those can be added to or subtracted by the council as it develops the audit commission committee. Anybody have any problems with that? Hearing none, we'll move on.
Our last section is our final discussion, which was section 1005. Which is one, do we want to keep calling it the word amendment? And two, we can revise the language as was discussed earlier. So currently that whole section has been added, and the additional language that was there, which was this charter may be amended in the manner described in the Connecticut General Statutes, was what we had included in our current charter. The expansion to begin a commission itself was added. So somebody, I wish I had audio up for that one to rewrite for us. Let's see. Anthony, do you remember what you said?
Actually, I think the attorney had the correct language, if I'm not mistaken.
Ben?
Why are you throwing me under the bus?
If time's the charm,
I'll give it a try.
go slowly though.
The town council shall, instead of may, shall, upon adoption of this charter, and subsequently every 10 years thereafter, review the town charter and determine, or, I don't know, do we need to say take a vote or determine whether or not
No,
a
you don't.
commission?
Yeah, vote's not required. You don't have to use that language.
Say that again?
You don't need to use the word vote.
Okay, shall determine if a charter review commission is necessary to review the charter.
How would they know that without looking at the
No,
charter?
that's
That's what I
that's
said, they will
yeah.
review the charter as
Review
a
it.
council and determine if.
But you can only review the charter by creating a commission.
No, in other words, the
They'll look at
the
it.
council will just look at the
it,
charter
yeah.
and determine if there's changes that need to happen, then they would recommend a
No,
charter
no,
review
I'm-
commission.
Respectfully, I think that's a legal matter because the charter now says that you have to appoint a commission to review the charter. So we could say, look at review, but if you're doing it, it's a violation of the current charter.
Yeah, Joe, I don't think so. I mean, you're here because the council
Anybody.
decided, hey, let's open the charter.
Yeah.
Well, I know, but it also says that it shall create a commission to review the charter. And how would you know to review it if you can't look at it? Mayor makes a good point. So if she's got the council looking at it, my read of statute is that they have to create this commission or a commission like it to do that.
I guess in my frame of thinking, in terms of how this process happens, the council we decided each counselor would review the charter, bring forward whether they felt there was any changes needed. We then presented those changes to the whole council and determined that we needed to form the commission to further review the charter and make changes as needed.
I mean, maybe it's a double-edged sword, I don't know. I mean, if they're gonna take the whole time to go through it, I would assume there must be something in there they wanna do. Because that's a lot of time on you.
Oh, no, I think you and I are talking about two different things.
Yeah.
By review, I'm just saying, each counselor went home and read through it and said, in this section, I think we might wanna, like, there's some things that need to be changed based on current language and current day standards.
And many times we will get responses from staff.
Yes.
That a section is not workable.
No,
for
no,
a
I
specific-
understand that part of it, but I just don't know how the process moves forward. Well, I think I've said my piece.
So to make it more general, would it just be that at 10 years, the town council will determine if charter review commission needs to be created? Will consider creation of a charter revision every 10 years?
That's a
I'm not
simple way
sure
of
of the
doing it.
objection to the mandated 10 years or sooner if the town council elects to do so. I'm not understanding the concern
Yeah,
about. the
Mr. Chair, I'm
language.
fine.
Because
going with
you're-
the original language as we proposed.
Okay.
Okay,
Which language are we going
well,
with?
the original language
The
is
original
amended.
language is shall.
So the proposed language that we had originally, okay. Give me a second here.
Was the commission all in favor of that? Going with the proposed original language? Hearing no opposition?
I'm good either way.
Okay,
Likewise,
okay.
All right. So.
And by the way, the council can change this when we get
During discussion.
just a recommendation.
Right. All right. So based upon those changes, would you like to do it as a roll call vote or?
Yeah, we'll do a roll call vote. I need a motion, right?
Yes.
And the motion should read,
If we are done under the discussion and review, this would be adoption of the proposed revisions in general.
okay,
The next one will be transmission to the town clerk.
okay, so the first one will be adoption of the recommendations and changes made by the town attorney and accepted by the commission. And so I'll call for a roll on that. I need a second to the motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
No.
Roll call.
Chairman Harpy,
Here, yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Capello,
Yes.
Commissioner Minor,
Yes, with objections noted.
yes, Commissioner Borup.
Yes.
Okay. And now the second motion would be submission of these recommendations to the town council,
To the
or
town clerk.
notice to the clerk,
To the clerk.
to the clerk.
My responsibility, once supplied by the commission, to turn it over to the council and
Okay,
to schedule a meeting between the commission and the council.
all right, so this is a motion to notify the clerk, to direct the clerk that we're prepared to have you move forward with submitting this to the town council.
Correct.
Do we have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
I'll take a roll call, please.
Chairman Harpy,
Yes.
Commissioner Gonzalez,
Yes.
Commissioner Capello,
Yes.
Commissioner Minor,
Yes, with objections noted.
Commissioner Borup.
Yes.
Okay.
Oops. It's supposed to be in. Oh, why is that there?
All right, I want to thank the town attorney for taking the time to go through that. We appreciate all of his input and his comments. And I want to thank the mayor for attending finding the time to attend the many meetings that she has to attend, her input as well. And I want to thank my fellow commissioners for their due diligence and discussions on various points and their input that they have provided, not only to the chair, but to the public as a whole. And very appreciative of their efforts. Next item is.
Thank you,
public
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry?
Thank you. I was just thanking you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. The next item is public participation on agenda items via Zoom application or phone, 2-minute time limit. And please address any member of the public wishing to make comment on the agenda item.
I do have one on Zoom.
Okay,
Ms. Lyons?
Hi, Rose
Rose.
Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. A few comments, and maybe you want to answer as I'm going along, but this is the third charter revision that I have participated in, and I thought the process was that the town council gives the commission charges to review the various sections. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to make the changes, such as I keep hearing that they told us they want to hear that they want to change that the town or the charter is reviewed every 10 years. Well, if you determine that that's not the way it should be, then maybe, like I say, it's up to them to decide. And I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about this and going over it, and I commend you for all your efforts, but it just seems like there's a few things that seem to be in your heads that you have to change and other things you don't have to change. But in any case, I'm hoping that these changes are going to be run by the people that they affect, like the Library Board of Trustees, the Parks and Rec, and the Development Commission, just to be sure that, in fact, that was the intent of what they wanted you to do in their various sections. And then put these changes onto the town website so people can look at them. I'm sitting here with the town charter in front of me, and I'm having a hard time following you with some of the things that have been discussed. I do want to say I'm very pleased that Attorney Ancona was here tonight, because I think I asked you at the last meeting when you wanted to close it and go forward with it to please have him give his input, because I thought it was important that he have a say before it goes before the town council. He reviewed it, and he has given his interpretation of what he thinks should be changed and shouldn't be changed. And one of the major things I kept hearing throughout this discussion was the words shall and may are interchangeable. And over the years, I've heard many discussions at the council table that shall and may are not interchangeable. Is there some way that they can be added into the charter, a definition or a statement that they are interchangeable or not, because we may have a town attorney 5 years from now that's asked for an opinion as to whether or not it's allowed under the charter, and he has a different opinion than Attorney Ancona. Section 410, the right for referendum, I bet you nobody's ever gone for the right to referendum because they can't figure it out. And that's probably the biggest holdup. And if you're going to deal with it when it comes to the table or when it comes to the town clerk's office, it's probably going to be too late to even get it done. But in any case, that's your decision to make. Hearing it's too late in the game reminds me of what I heard at the town hall renovation, that town manager Salamone told 3 people who came and objected to the building of the Parks and Rec building on the Mill Pond Park area that they came too late to the dance. It's not too late, in my opinion, until it's written in stone as to what's going to referendum. So I am disappointed that a lot of people have not shown up and had anything to say other than comments on Facebook, but I'm hoping if you put these changes on the website that people will take the time, and if they don't, oh well, too bad for them. In any case, thank you all for your time. Just one last thing, maybe it would be helpful, and I hope that this isn't going to happen again in my lifetime, that if you do have charter revision, that as you go through a few sections at a time, that the town attorney can review them and give you his feedback instead of bringing it to the end here, where it's been, almost 2 hours now that we've gone through exactly what you've been going through over the past few months or month or so. Thank you again for all your time and your effort. And just one last question. The new town council meeting, the time to be determined, could you just explain to me when is that going to be determined as to when the new town council, the time the new town council will meet?
Well, Rose, we had recommended a specific time. The town attorney didn't see the need for a specific time, that they could have the option to set it within proper notification to the public of the meeting, the time involved. And that was his recommendation. But we had put 7 o'clock in there, changed it from 8 to 7, because that was consistent with other meetings that the council historically on a time basis meets at. So that's how that developed.
And so the
town attorney decided to make a change on that, which
how would the new town council decide the time? I'm just a little, bear with me, I'm a little confused, and it's probably the simplest thing that you did.
Mr. Chair, the way I understand it, let's see if I have this straight, is that it's based on the meeting schedule established by the previous council before the election. So they set the meetings, they set the meeting time, and that will be the meeting time of the new council.
For some reason, I thought that the new council set, okay, so the old council sets the new meeting times for the coming in, the council that's coming in?
Yeah.
Correct. It would be based upon the annual meeting schedule as set by the council and put into effect as of February 1st of every year. So
okay.
Every year the council goes through, they make a determination of when all of their regular meetings would be. This one would be considered under that. We'd call it the organizational meeting as it is, but it would have its set time as well and be approved under that schedule as we do now. But in current day, we actually notate that as an 8 o'clock meeting versus a 7 o'clock, which is our standard.
So in February of the year of the election, they'll
Correct.
determine, okay, all right, thank you.
it could be 7 or 8 or later.
Or later.
Sounds good to me.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
Have a good evening now.
You as well.
Any other public participation?
No more online, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Comments by commissioners? Oh, yes, sir. State your name and address.
Yeah, Brian Whalen, 22 Pebble Drive, Newington. I'd just like to thank all of you for undertaking such a big project for the town. As a taxpayer and resident, I really appreciate, I know a lot of time taken away from your families, and I just want to say thank you very much for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. Any other members of the public?
No,
And,
no one else online.
Nothing online? Okay. Comments by commissioners? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? We stand adjourned.
26.